This video was made possible by you. If you want to save time and support what I do, check the link in the description that will take you to my store where you can purchase the source file for what we're creating in this video, as well as other tutorials on my channel. Thank you for your support, and let's get back to the video. Welcome to a second part of a mini video series on creating an animated send button with micro interactions in Figma. What you're looking at is a wireframe. It's basically an overview of different states of the final component that we're going to be creating. If all of this is new to you, I recommend checking out the playlist linked below where you can find the previous part of this mini series. Let's waste no more time and dive right in. I already mentioned that this interaction, this interactive component is going to be similar in structure to the add to cart button. I'm specifically talking about having the icon as a separate component with individual states that are then used within that main component. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing with this one as well. There's going to be a few challenges that we're going to have to sort out. For example, as you can see in this state, the envelope is clipped by the button, while at the same time here it is not. Like the icon in one state is limited by the boundaries of the button, but in another case it is not. So that's definitely an interesting challenge that we're going to have to be solving. So definitely make sure to stick around until the end of the video to see how we solve all of these challenges, or until the end of the mini series to actually find out what the final result looks like. And I'm going to start by actually looking at the height of this button, because this icon container is probably going to have the same height. We're working with 56. The very first thing I'm going to do is use my frame tool, press F on my keyboard, and then create a frame that's going to be 56 pixels tall. I'm going to rename this to send icon, okay? Or more like send animated icon, all right? We're gonna have probably a rectangle, so let me create a rectangle by pressing R on my keyboard. It's gonna be like 50 by, let's say 36, could be actually white. And then I'm gonna rename this rectangle to envelope front. So we're gonna have the front part, right? The outer layer that's gonna be closer to us. And then I'm gonna press enter, and when I hover over the top edge, you can see that I get this little fella over here. I'm gonna click it, and then I'm gonna just drag it while holding down shift to drag it down in precisely a straight line down. Awesome. And then I'm gonna press enter again to finalize this change. I think that it could be even a bit lower, so let me press enter again and then just click on this and do a couple arrow presses to get this to where we want this to be. All right, so I think this is okay. I think this front of the envelope should have rounded corners on the bottom. I think it's going to look good. So I'm going to press enter again, click and drag, and then with these corners selected, I'm going to go for maybe 6, 4, 6 looks good. Let's try that. Awesome. And what I'm going to do next is create that part of the envelope that's actually going to close this whole thing, right? So what I'm going to do is, again, rectangle, that's going to be 50 points wide. And if I just align the top edge with this point exactly, I can then simply just drag out the bottom edge to the top, and I get a rectangle that is precisely as tall as this dent. So that's good. What I'm going to do then is press enter and then click on the bottom to create this point again, and then click and drag like this and shift backspace, enter. And I'm going to do something similar for the left side. Select, shift backspace, enter. So we get an element that is precisely kind of locks in precisely with the open envelope. What I'm hoping for then is for us to be able to animate something like this, right? So we're going to probably, in the prototype, in the component, we're going to probably animate this movement, right? Hopefully it's going to allow us to do this. I think that could look cool. So we have to remember, or we have to be aware of the fact that this is 18 points tall. So it's probably going to be like going from here to here. And as you can see, we have our first problem, which is going to be that this is simply too tall. this is too tall to fit into the container. So what I'm going to do is probably just going to select this part, enter, and then shorten this a little bit by, again, click and drag and then moving these points. This still looks good for an envelope. So I think we could just reduce the height like this, right? Yeah, I think this is still looks pretty good. So why don't we just do it like that? Okay, and I have just learned that this top part is called the seal flap. So we're going to rename this to the seal flap. I would just call it probably like the envelope door, but let's use the right terms. So that's a seal flap. And apparently this is the bottom flap. So let's rename that to the bottom flap. And then whatever's going to be behind, I think looking at an image from Google, that's supposed to be the face. So let me just duplicate this bottom flap, press enter, select this one and shift backspace. And we have our face. Okay, this face is going to be in the back, so let's do command left bracket and let's make this a little bit darker like that. And now we have all the parts of an envelope that we need, right? We have the bottom flap, we have the face, and we have the seal flap. Hopefully I'm naming all of these correctly, but you get my point nevertheless, right? So we have all three parts to an envelope. I think this looks pretty good so far. I'm just thinking that after the envelope is closed, we could make this a little bit more rounded because this looks very sharp in comparison with the overall aesthetic of the envelope. We will see if that's actually going to be a problem, if that's going to irritate us. So for now, I'm just going to keep it, but let's see. And now for this document, actually, I think I'm going to do a simple rectangle. Let's do actually similar dimensions to an actual letter. So why don't I do 21 by 30 actually. I think that's because the A4 dimensions are 210 by 297 millimeters. For my US viewers, that's the equivalent of a letter, but with slightly different dimensions. All right, so I'm gonna make this fully white. I'm gonna also round the corners a little bit. I'm gonna log the aspect ratio, and I'm gonna probably scale this to be about, I don't know, like this size maybe. Now at the same time, we somehow have to make our envelope a bit less prominent. We have to make it look as if it's in the background. So I'm just thinking whether we should do this, so darkening the color, or if we should add a shadow to this letter, which I think we could probably add a shadow, right? I think we should probably add a shadow. I think it looks pretty good. I just have to make it a bit subtle, not that obvious. Okay, perfect. Let's do letter. And then let me grab my pen tool and do click, hold down shift, click again. And let's make this line a bit thicker. Let's go for 2 maybe. I think 2 seems right. Then let's make sure this is like 7 from the top, maybe 8 and 5 from the sides. I think that could look good. Maybe a bit less from the sides, maybe 6 from the sides. Actually, why don't we try that? By the way, I'm using Option and H for aligning. I think the previous one was okay. So let's go back to 5 from the sides. Okay, and let me just duplicate this. Let's say 5 distant from each other, I think, or maybe 6. Let's duplicate this one, move it again, similar distance. Okay, that's perfect. Right, duplicate again, enter, select, move this one to the left so that we get some irregularity. So this now actually looks like a piece of text, like a few short paragraphs, maybe 1 paragraph. Let's see if we round endings look good on this. Maybe I'm not so sure. I wouldn't go for these necessarily. Let's just keep them sharp. And actually let's keep the paper sharp as well, or just like 1 pixel in terms of the rounding. Maybe now that I look at it, I think we could make it 1 point. I think that looks a bit more sharp, precise, nicer. I think I'm gonna go for 1 with the 5 in terms of distance. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think this looks better. Let me just select all these lines of text. Let me group this and rename this to text. And then let me grab the letter and text and Command G and rename this to letter. All right, so we have our letter. Awesome. I think I'm just gonna make these two a bit lighter. So let's go for that. Maybe, yeah, and let's add a bit of a shadow on this one. So effects, drop shadow, let's make it negative in terms of the Y coordinates. And let's blur it a bit more, maybe, and make it real subtle. So like 8. And this one's actually gonna be below the bottom flap so that the shadow is continuous, right? So we get this, right? And not this essentially. So let's revert it back. And I'm gonna do again 8. So you can already see that with the shadows, we're adding like depth to our icon illustration. So that's pretty nice. I think it's a good trick, especially if you're working with objects of similar color. So let me press enter again. And I'm probably gonna reduce the rounding of these to like 3 or 4. Yeah. And then let's just do a more intense shadow here, or like more blurred. So let me just Command X on the shadow and add it on the layer as a whole group. Blur it a bit more, so like 12 maybe, bigger opacity, 24. What do we think? Yeah, I think this is pretty nice. Although I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a fan of how big this envelope is. I'm just gonna select all of this and probably shrink it to about this size, right? I just think it's too prominent and doesn't look good. So let me just do this. And with the paper, let's do it slightly smaller. Let's unlock the aspect ratio. Let's do this, right? Of course, these are not precise letter paper dimensions anymore, but that's not really the point. Okay, let me just grab this as a whole, center it, and then I'm gonna just probably select both of these, center, and then select this thing and just move it closer. Basically, we don't need that much of a width on this one. I think a nice 56 by 56 square is actually enough. So let's do that. Let's do 2 pixels from both left and right. And yeah, I think this icon is okay. I think we could turn this into a component now and start preparing these individual states. So as you can see, we do have the first one basically finished, right? And we have to create 1, 2, 3 more states. All right. So let me press plus on this component. It's gonna add a variant, and I'm gonna probably, since we're gonna be moving our letter like way up above the icon container, I'm just gonna make it go to the side. So I'm gonna make it go like this, right? I'm probably also gonna expand this make it way bigger, and then just move these so we have a lot of space to work with. Okay, that's great. And what I'm gonna do next is I'm just gonna rename this to state, or like icon state. The first one's gonna be default, and the second one is gonna be letter is up. Okay, and just for testing purposes, here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna use this icon and I'm gonna do Command X, like an instance, right? And I'm gonna go to new test page 2 and paste that in. What I wanna do is I wanna check if the animation actually makes sense and looks good. So I'm gonna test this icon by using the click interaction or the tap interaction. So on tap, change to letter is up, animation instant. Here's what I'm gonna do next. I'm gonna select both of these and make sure the clip content is unchecked so that when we now move this letter up, it's actually gonna be visible beyond the boundaries of its container, right? So we wanna make this letter go up into the air and then go back down. So let's test this out actually. Let me launch the prototype and let's test if this animation is gonna work. Right? We're going to switch it off afterwards because this is not going to be actually on click, but this component is going to transition after delay. similar to what we have here, right? So we don't have any interactions with the actual card icon, but that's okay because this is just for the testing purposes. All right, so let me launch this, new test page 2, click, and yeah, okay, so the states are looking good, but there is no animation happening in between. What's the problem? Let's take a look at this interaction. The problem is because we forgot to set this up to smart animate. Let's do smart animate, ease out 300 milliseconds. Let's reset again, new test page 2, click, click, and it's not working at all. So let me just reload the tab and let's click it again. Okay, this works perfectly. I like this. So we're gonna keep the animation like this. I think I'm just gonna make it a bit faster. So like 180 maybe. Let's do 180. Let's try that again. 180, does that work? Oh, we have to reload the prototype again. Click it. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So 180 it is. All right, and then let me just create another component, another variant, sorry. And this variant is gonna be called letter is inside the envelope. Letter is inside the envelope. And what we're gonna do is make the letter go inside the envelope. So I'm gonna just rotate this and I'm gonna position it somewhere around here, like this. That makes sense. And then I'm gonna probably make sure that on all of these 3 variants, the bottom flap is actually, or sorry, just these 2 variants, the bottom flap is actually above the letter, right? So we actually get this. Now let's try that out again. Let's connect these 2 on tap, smart animate, and let's see what that looks like, right? So as you can see, if I reset again, if I click and then click again, you can see this is more or less what we want. Actually, let me make this bigger. So let's go for K tool 2x, just so we can see what's actually happening, right? Click once, oops, I have to reload the prototype again. So click once, click again. So this is what the animation is actually gonna look like. I think now that I look at it, I think we should actually make the letter go directly above the envelope. Maybe rotate it a little bit, maybe like this. Let's see what that's gonna look like. Let's reload. So click, click. Yes, this actually works better. And as you can see that if I take a look at my wireframe, I was actually planning to do it like this. But as you can see, it simply looks better if it flies out towards the right and then goes in like that, right? Yeah. And now here's another challenge we have to solve. How do we make this part of the letter hidden? I think that the best way to go about this is actually create a container for this letter, which is gonna have the bottom edge somewhere around here, and it's gonna then extend way above this frame, and it's gonna have clip content. So similar to when I click clip content here, you can see that it's gonna cut off this. So we need somehow to create a frame that's gonna cut this letter off, but only in one place and in one direction where we need it. So we basically only need to cut it off here, but not here at the top. You need the document, the letter, to extend beyond that container. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create a frame inside of the first variant, and I'm gonna make it go all the way up here. I'm gonna make it like 80, 85 points. I'm gonna extend that to, whoops, no, I don't want these inside of the frame. I'm gonna drag it outside. So the frame is gonna have to respect the letter order that all of these other have. That's gonna be the face at the very bottom. So I'm using command left bracket. Then that's gonna be, the next is gonna be the seal flap, and then it's gonna be the bottom flap. And the letter is actually gonna be, in this case, is gonna be above all of this. And the frame now is gonna just be full width, right? But at the same time, I'm gonna first call this frame letter container. It's gonna be letter container. And I am going to move this up and then move the letter inside of the container. Okay, so now we have a letter container that contains the letter. I'm just gonna copy this and paste that here. But at the same time, I'm just going to make sure that now the letter container is below the bottom flap, right? Below this. And it's going to contain not this initially positioned letter, but this newly positioned letter. And you can already see how it's creating a cutoff of the shadow. So we might have to also fix that. Then also we need to make sure it ends right with the envelope bottom. So 1 pixel up in the previous variant and 1 pixel down on the letter to compensate something similar here. So now what we have here is we have the letter contained within a letter container. Nice. I'm going to copy this again and paste it inside of the last variant. And I'm going to just make sure it's at a similar level to the initial letter. And I'm just going to take the letter and I'm going to move it inside of the container and then remove the initial one. So now you can see that it's nicely masked from the lower side. Let's take a look at what this looks like. Let's take a look at the prototype. Let me reload the tab. So let me click again, and you can see how nicely it respects the boundaries of the icon. Awesome. So I think I'm very happy with how this is going so far. I'm just thinking that after this movement is done, we could actually make this whole thing, the envelope, move into the center, right? Let's make it move into the center. So it's going to be 8 from both sides. And then the letter container, actually the letter within the letter container is going to be moved into the center as well. So it can't be actually from the center because it has an odd number of pixels on the width, but we can fix that by adding 1 extra pixel. Nobody's going to notice. And now it's completely symmetrical. We can also add 1 point on the width here. So now that we have something that is absolutely completely symmetrical. Let's go again through the process. Let me reload the tab and let me test it again. I click on it and I click it again and it lands nicely inside of the envelope. Perfect. So how do we go about solving this issue? How do we go about solving the shadow cutoff? One way to solve this would be to extend this container to the right even so that the shadow has space to be shown even on this side. That's going to require making sure that the letter is actually tied to the left and top. And then in the second variant also left and top. And in the final version also letter is going to be left, top and left, so that when we scale this up, this actually is going to stay in place. It's not going to move with the container. So I'm just going to extend this. Let's see how much extension is needed. I actually think extending it to 65 pixels in terms of width is going to be plenty. So let's do just 65 and 65 on this one as well. Okay, now you can see that we still have the cutoff at the bottom, but at the same time, it is not affecting the shadow. What if we then actually also moved this envelope to the center, right? Let's move this to the center right after the letter jumps up. Then we could make the letter go slightly more towards the left. And now let's again relaunch the prototype and let's see what's gonna happen. All right, so I click it again. Perfect. I think this looks very good. I'm just thinking this animation could be a little bit longer. So let's do actually 300 on this one. Let's see again. Click. Okay, this is looking pretty good. I think we could move all of this. We could just take this variant, enter, and then move all of this a few points to the top so that it's optically centered a bit better. So then we're also going to get the movement on the envelope. I think it's going to look nice. I think we also could move this a little bit to the left, maybe like that. Let's see again what's the result now. So click. All right. So I think this looks pretty good. We get a little artifact, but that should be no problem when we scale that down, I hope. Actually, let's do that. Let's scale that down to, let's create a duplicate. Let's create like an auto layout on this one. auto, and then let's just next to each other, K 50%. Let's relaunch the prototype, reload, right? Click. Okay, so we do get some kind of an artifact on both, but we're gonna solve that later. Now let's focus on continuing with this interaction. Let's just extend this, click plus, and what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna do on the icon state, I'm gonna do envelope is closed. And what I'm gonna do is first, I'm gonna make sure the seal flap is above the letter container, and then I'm gonna make sure, I'm just gonna take this and resize it like that to make it close, right? And now what I'm gonna do is again, connect those two, on tap, change to envelope is closed, smart animate, ease out, and let's test this again. Reload tab. So click, 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 beautiful, click, click. Of course, the animation is then gonna happen automatically, but now you can see that we actually managed to make this work. We actually managed to animate the whole thing so that it looks as if it's actually closing. Perfect. I'm then also gonna select all of this, select this variant, enter, and just move it so that this envelope is in the middle of the layout, or at least appears to be in the middle of the layout. All right, so how do we deal with these sharp edges that I really don't like now, okay? I think that we could actually fake these corners. So hear me out. I'm gonna have what? This is a 4 pixel radius. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a square that is 4 pixels, okay? Square that is 4 pixels. Then I'm gonna create a circle that is 8. And then I'm gonna select both of these, make sure the ellipse is on top, and I'm gonna do subtract selection. All right, so I have this weird little thing that I'm gonna make it like gray, and I'm gonna do Command X on this, select this, and Command V. And then I'm gonna position it here, and I'm gonna do rename this to, first of all, to top left round corner, and then I'm gonna duplicate this and do top right round corner, okay? And I'm gonna flip it, Shift V, and flip this one, Shift V and Shift H, right? And then I'm gonna take these, copy, select this variant and paste. And I'm gonna make sure it is positioned, I think probably in the same location. So it's gonna be here. And I'm gonna take these and I'm gonna do 0 so that it's completely black. And then I'm gonna do 0 on these as well. And voila, we now have fake rounded corners. Let's take a look what the final result looks like. Okay, I'm gonna reload again. So let's do click, click, click. Excellent. And it looks as if it's rounding by itself, but it's all fake. It's just an illusion, but I think it's the best and quickest, so the cleanest solution at this point, because I'm afraid that I remember that previously when I was working with mask and so on, I remember it created some kind of problems. So I just want to go for the simplest solution for now. And so with the seal flap, let me just go and do Command right bracket so that it's above the bottom flap. And let me turn it white. Let's make it white. And now let me add an effect like a shadow, right? And with this one, we're gonna have what? Let's say it's gonna be a bit blurry. Let's see, it's gonna be like 9 maybe. Let's blur it even more, like 12. Increase the blurring. I think this looks pretty good. Let's see again what this looks like. Refresh, reload tab, click, click, click. All right, so I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. Maybe let me increase the shadow on this one because it looks very faint. So let's go for 24. Let's try 24. And let me also maybe try moving the shadow a little bit to the right. What do we think? No, I think I'm just gonna keep it at center, to be honest. So let's take a look at what we actually achieved. We put together quite a complicated animation, or like states for the animation. I mean, this wasn't easy to assemble, right? Let's try and address this little artifact that's happening. If you notice, there's like a black line appearing here when it's moving upwards. Let me actually let me select the seal flap and the face by Command and Shift clicking. Then I'm going to do Command C and Command V. And then I'm going to do union, right? Union. I'm going to call this Command R to rename this to envelope helper background. And I'm going to move this all the way to the back, so it's behind all of these. And I'm going to paste this inside of these other variants, and I'm going to make sure it's always all the way in the back. So let's do Command C, Command V, all the way in the back, and fully covers, or like exactly covers that area. Actually, I don't think it was an issue here anymore. It was just a matter of here. So let's reset the prototype again and let's see if that helps. All right, so click, click, and then final click again. Click, click, final click again. All right, so after all, we do need the envelope here as well. Okay, so let me paste that in, Command Option left bracket, and let's align that precisely. And one final check. Let's see if that helps. All right, click, perfect. Now that helps a lot, but we do get an unwanted piece of, we do get a bit of the flap that shouldn't be there in this transition. So let me just take this, enter, and let me just do this. Let me just, on the seal flap within the envelope helper background, I'm just gonna shrink it like this, right? And I think that should help. Let's reload this. Let's hope that works. Click, click, click again. All right, so it creates all sorts of problems, but don't worry, we're gonna make this work. I have one final potential solution, and that is going to be adding a same color shadow that is not blurred on the seal flap. Let's just do 1 pixel. Let's do this color and let's make it 100%. And let's just copy this. Let's just copy this effect, right? Copy and position this correctly. And let me just paste, paste. And let's try if that helps. So click, click, click. And finally, this helped solving the problem. So again, I've been saying this since forever. It is all about finding workarounds in Figma. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this result. Let me actually connect the last variant to the first one, and let me do on tap, change instant, so that we can go in the circle, right? So this is the animation that we have prepared. I'm pretty happy with this. It's been complicated, and we are now ready to take this and put it inside of a button and then make sure it's animated automatically. But I think I'm gonna keep that for another video because this tutorial is already getting quite long. So if you also managed to make this work along with me, great work today. We're gonna continue in the next video, and let's once again play around with this because it's quite satisfying to look at, if I'm being honest. We got a nice clean animation with no artifacts. It's pretty good, and it's gonna look even better when it's gonna be automatically animated. So thanks for tuning in today. Hope you found this video useful. Go check out the file linked in the description where the final outcome of this is gonna be. And you're gonna also, if you purchase the source file for this video, you're also gonna get not only what we're working on currently, but all these projects, all these other micro interactions and all these pages. And you can use this as a basis for your mobile app design system, right? Definitely go and check out the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.